Hello, Atmore. It's the Lloyd and Friends Show. And now here's your host, Lloyd Albritton.
Lloyd Albritton here, once again with Lloyd and Friends, talking with some of the local folks here in Atmore, Alabama. We broadcast on WGYJ LP right here in Atmore. That's 93.5 FM on your dial. We broadcast every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. So if you're listening to us on the dial, that's great. It's a small band station, so if you have friends out of town who'd like to tune in with us, they can easily do so. Just simply go to the radio station. What do you call that, Tom? The site, the website.
Website, there you go.
The website. Just go in there. That's light935fm.com. And just scroll right down to the bottom of the page there and just stream live, and you can listen in. And so we're going to be archiving these. We'll advise you on that later, and you can go in and get a second chance. But we'd love for you to come on, join us on the broadcast every Saturday morning. This morning I'm talking with Mr. Tom Tschida. That's Cheeta,
It's
right?
not even close. But we'll just go with "Don't call me late for supper," okay?
Okay, I know how to spell his name. He got a funny name. Generally we kind of look at the folks that have been in Atmore a long time. We've been interviewing some of those and have maybe experienced Atmore in the 50s or 60s or even earlier, if they're
Sure.
still living. And that's great, to find out what people experienced in Atmore history and building the history. But, we have a future, too. And people are coming in all the time. We love to have new people in Atmore, because if we don't, all the old people die and there's nobody
fact.
here, right? So we want new people to come in. And Tom is one of those guys. I've known him just speaking friendly for a few years, but never known a lot about Tom Tschida.
I've been here 10 years, right?
He's been here 10 years
10
now.
years.
We see him around, and I've never really sat down and talked with him about who he is and where he came from and what the heck are you doing in Atmore, Tom?
My wife asked me that 1,000 times. I was looking to retire, and I was going to move down into Florida, and I've got a brother in Molino that took me to this area. So I was looking in the Pace Milton area.
Where were you living before?
Minnesota.
Minnesota,
Yep,
okay.
Yep, where it's cold and nasty, and we won't get into politics.
Is
But,
that a Yankee?
Oh,
Minnesota?
that's definitely a Yankee.
Everywhere but Alabama's pretty much a Yankee.
Well, anything north of the Mason-Dixon line for sure, but
Okay.
Minnesota's about as north as you can go.
Okay.
But I was looking for a house down here, and I literally stumbled upon Atmore by mistake, literally by mistake, and called my wife. I said, find us a house in Atmore, Alabama. And she said, Ala what? Thinking we were moving to Florida, and now all of a sudden I'm saying Alabama, but
Oh, that's what you had been talking about.
oh,
before.
definitely Florida. Alabama never entered into the picture. And she said, go look at 507 South Main. I did. We made an offer. They accepted the offer, and about 3 weeks later, we were here. And I found my little piece of paradise right here in this small town.
How about that?
This is one of the greatest towns that people could live in.
Atmore really is a senior town.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we are lacking with our youth, I think, with things for youth to do, or industry's always been a problem but it's a senior town. There's a lot of stuff for seniors to do. I think
The demographics are definitely senior town, sure. But that's changing. And we've got the schools that are offering so much right now. Kids can leave our high schools, and people don't realize this because it's got such a bad name. But kids can leave our high school with a welding degree, making $60,000 a year, or if they apply themselves, they can go 2 years of college in our high school and have the other 2 years paid for. So the opportunities are there for the families who want to get involved with their kids and raise a family here. This is a great community to raise a family in. So it's just going to take that transition time to get the belief out there that, Atmore is where it's at. And we're starting. We've got the industry in here. We got a housing shortage. We've got, great schools. We got new leadership in our school. And it's 10 years. 10 years, and it's going to be in all different places.
Has this been changing for the better, or is it always been this way and we just misjudge? Or
Well,
I mean, Atmore has a reputation for having a poor school system. It does.
but it doesn't have to. And I think we need to change that. We need to change that outlook. People need to go to the schools and see what we're actually doing here, because what we're doing is amazing, absolutely amazing things at the junior high, at the senior high. And I've gotten, I don't have a dog in this fight by any means.
You don't have any children?
No,
or
not down here. So
no.
I mean, yeah, it's. I don't have a dog in the fight, but when you go and visit the schools and see what's really going on, it's absolutely amazing what the opportunities are for our kids in Atmore. So, it's going to take some time. You got to get the old belief system out, but it's coming. It's 10 years. 10 years, I think you're going to see a whole new demographic here. We see it already in real estate. So,
right. Well, I'm glad to see you optimistic because that is people. A lot of folks are moving in when we get some industry. The top execs, the people that will come in and spend some money. A lot of them are choosing to go to Daphne or to Eastern Shore, and as more upscale when they start looking at school. I think schools have been a real Achilles heel.
I'm sure it is.
For us in Atmore because people love their children, and they're going to do what's best for them.
We're always going to do what's best for our kids. And we do have some private schools here that are phenomenal. And we can't erase them either. But the school systems here, you can find everything you need and everything you want if you just have to open your eyes and look and apply yourself. I mean, if the parents are involved in their kids' education, it doesn't matter if they go to Harvard or if they go to a little community college. It ain't going to make a difference because that's what it's all about. I was in education for 20-some years with driver education, and the parents that were involved made all the difference in the world. So don't blame the kids, don't blame the school. Look inward. And what did you do with your kid today? Did you have supper with your kid today? Did you sit down at a dinner table and have dinner with your kid today? And that's where it all begins, right at home.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Although I'm still a little dubious, and this is about you. This is not about the school system, but
sure, I know we've got a rabbit trail.
How do you changing those parents? I've subbed at the schools here. I know a lot of the teachers, and I know what's going on in the schools. The teachers are great. The problem is behavioral issues, particularly in the middle school and the elementary school.
Absolutely.
Behavioral issues because you can't really teach a child anything until you get their attention. And if you have behavioral issues, that is a real problem. I think the high school has got a better handle, seems like, on behavioral issues. And I agree with you that we do have some wonderful programs.
Unbelievable
but
programs.
How do you get them? And two, we still got, Tom, it seems to me like, there's an old joke. It says, the Catholics all say the Pope says, and the Baptists say the Bible says, and Presbyterians, they say, well, it seems to me like. So it seems,
sure enough is.
But it seems to me like, what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say.
Can't help you on that one.
I have these senior moments.
Welcome to the club.
But anyway, it'll come back to me in just a minute as soon as we get on to the next topic. But so much for the schools. I think we've got a lot to work on there, and I think it's wonderful that we have all these resources. I'm just concerned about the home, the parents, and you're absolutely right. That's where it all starts. But how do you change that?
And I don't have that answer. And when I taught driver education, traffic safety. So they wanted what I had to offer. So they were going to behave in my class. So I don't have that challenge of the English teacher.
Oh, I know what I was going to.
So
I know what I was going to.
I can't help you in that.
Let me jump in here because this is something that you're probably pretty smart on. You could have an answer for this. We desegregated this country back in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
We went through all of the civil rights movement, and if you look at the schools, what has happened, and in the neighborhoods, you've had what's called white flight. a lot of the white people are moving away. The private schools. We've got 2 or 3 private schools right here in Atmore.
That's correct.
And that leaves the public school majority black. And
Correct.
so we seem to have, even after all of these years, we still self-segregated, and we continue to do that. I have in my comings and goings in politics, I've politicked here and there in all the neighborhoods here in Atmore. Ran for mayor one time. Some people still mad with me about that. But even like over at the senior center, a lot of wonderful senior people go over there. I don't know if you patronize that. But, I used to go over and I would notice that blacks and whites would segregate themselves. The blacks are sitting at this table and the whites are over there. They hug necks, they shake hands, they're friendly, and then they go segregate. Do you see that? Or am I wrong?
I definitely see it. Now, we've got 2 different issues there. When we come to the school, and I don't know if this is a good or not a good statement, but so what?
Well, it's okay.
If our school's 90% African American or 90% white, we still have children, and the children are the answer, and they're no different than each other. And if there's a racial issue in the school, it needs to be dealt with immediately and promptly.
But what about the paradigm earlier on where we said that we need to integrate the schools so that the kids could have a balanced exposure to life, and they go to school with different kinds of kids, and so we decided that was socially desirable to have integration in our schools. And we worked real hard at that, and here we are just trying to go the other way.
But
that's kind of
when that happened, now, and I can only speak for Minnesota, when we had busing and such, what you did is you took the kids out of the neighborhood schools, and you also took the parents out of the neighborhood schools. When you're going to a neighborhood school and you mess up, not only does the school know, your parents know, and the next door neighbor knows also in case. But when you're taking your kids and driving them 30 miles, it's no longer a neighborhood school, and it's harder for the parents to be involved, and you don't have the neighbor involvement, you don't have the community involvement. You've taken the community out of the school, and this whole color thing. What does it matter? People are people are people, and it shouldn't. I mean, I consider myself a devout Christian. I practice Christianity, but you know what? My Jesus wasn't blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and surfing the Red Sea, and why does that matter?
Yeah.
And until we get over that, it ain't going to change.
Well, I agree.
But let's
I agree.
dump our resources where they need to be in the children.
Yeah. Well, I can see that you are a social kind of guy. You've moved here to Atmore. You've been here 10 years?
10 years.
Been here 10 years. And I know that you are active in things that go on around Atmore. What are some of the things? What are some of your other passions?
Well, we are involved with the Strand Theater, of course.
You're involved with the
The
Pride of
my
Atmore.
wife came home one day and said we just bought a theater. So you can imagine my concern on that. But gotten very, very involved in the Pride of Atmore now with the hardware store and the theater and stuff, which is great. Revitalization in downtown. I'm on the chamber board, have been for, I think it's my 5th year, 6th year, somewhere in that area. I like what the chamber's doing. As strong, as strong as the community wants to make it. I'm the emergency chaplain for the fire department.
Okay.
I do dispatch at the police department. I believe that might be.
You're just here, there, and everywhere, aren't you? Now,
I love people, and that's really what
that
it
probably
comes
has a lot
down
to do with it. Now, is this the new Tom Tschida, or have you always been this way? You came from Minnesota. Were you doing all this in Minnesota?
No.
Or does this kind of come about?
More so the small town atmosphere. I was always a big town guy. I mean, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and
That's what you liked about the small town. You were able to do some of these things.
that's right. You get to know people.
But you always kind of had it in you.
I don't know, but it's here now, so
It's here now.
we're going to use
That's
what
all
we
that
got.
matters. Okay. All right. Now let's go back and tell me a little bit about you grew up in Minnesota. Tell me where and what was your youth like as far as what made you who you are now.
Well, it's a great question. A lot
Your
of people have asked
loquacious.
that.
You consider yourself an extrovert, I would assume.
Yes, and the tests prove it too. So
The test, yeah, I've taken the test.
taking that
too, yeah.
test too.
Absolutely.
But we
Your parents that way too? I mean, this is
I
just
don't
a
think so.
family trait. And your wife is this way too, isn't she? Your wife is
As
kinda
much as she
outgoing.
can with
It's
her health
outgoing.
issues, yes, she
Okay.
she wants to be out there more. But born in St. Paul, Minneapolis area. My father was an electrical inspector for the city, staunch Democrat. The world revolved around Democrats. My mother passed away when I was 8. My dad remarried when I was about 13. So, my life went through some changes there. But I was very fortunate. I never lacked for anything. I've got 4 siblings.
4 siblings, okay.
And there's 11 years between me and the next oldest, and 18 between me and the oldest. So I was, quote unquote, the result of a
18
ring.
years.
There's 18 years between me and the oldest,
Between you and the oldest.
and
you're
11
what?
years between me and the next youngest. So my dad always said I was the result of a raining camping trip. So
Okay.
here I am. So I was basically an only child.
Yeah, that's what my father said. He told us we were all accidents.
Yeah. So, and hopefully a good accident, but I was fairly privileged raised. I was raised on the St. Croix River. I always had a boat. I can't say that I lacked for anything or understand lacking for anything. So if, I've been blessed. I don't know how better to say that. We,
Are you, without moving into politics, which I promise you we're not here to talk about that, are you a liberal?
I
Would you
lean a
consider
little
yourself
bit
a liberal?
right, I would say.
A little bit right.
I'd like to say not Republican or Democrat, but American.
Okay.
And I think the more people start to realize that,
There's a middle.
let's
are.
do what's best for the country and not worry about labels.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And we're big on labels in America. We're big on labels.
I agree.
Red, blue, left, right, Republican, Democrat. I mean, we got a problem there.
Yeah.
Common sense needs to enter into it. But anyhow, we owned a driving school. Me and my second wife, and
Driving school.
driving
Okay.
school. We taught. Well, we did everything. We started with teenagers, of course, teaching them to drive because the Minnesota's required, and moved into commercial. We did 3M, Ford. We did some big stuff with larger corporations, and was given the opportunity to retire early. When insurance got too expensive and gas got too expensive, we were fortunate enough to be in a position where we could walk away, and that's what we did. So when we were after that,
Now,
a year or two,
you look to be a relatively young guy
I really like you.
now. I mean, you're not a kid, but you look pretty good. I don't know how old you are. How old are you?
I'm 58.
58.
7, 8, 9, 50. Born in 63. You do the math.
Okay. So you retired you cashed out of this other business endeavor in your 40s.
Yes.
That's good.
And we were living in Minnesota. We had a beautiful condo on the St. Croix River, and we had a tragedy happen in our life. We lost our 23-year-old son,
Well, I'm sorry. to hear
and just decided that it's time to start over. So we waited a year, and that's what I tell everybody. If you go through a tragedy, you wait a year before you do anything big. And moved down here, and here we are. And as I say, I'm loving every minute of it.
Now, your wife, she grew up in your hometown? Or
She grew up in Red Wing, which is a town about twice the size of Atmore, so not huge, but a river town, which a lot of places in Minnesota are, of course. And she grew up with 3 sisters. She was much more small town than I was.
Go to school together?
No. We were 40 miles apart and met online.
Met online. How about that?
Yeah. When me and my first wife separated, that was the AOL chat groups.
Okay.
So it's been
Yeah.
23 years, and I wouldn't trade a day of it. Wouldn't trade a day
Well,
of it.
I met my wife online, too.
Really?
Well, actually, we went to high school together. I don't know how many. I'll tell this story quickly, although it's not about me. But I came back here. My dad was getting old, and I'd been around the country working, and I never could find a job in a small town, so I always kind of ended up moving somewhere else. But
Sure.
I'd come back here from New York. Actually, from Colorado. I'd moved to Colorado for a few years, and then came back here. And I lived in a little town called Montrose, Colorado.
Okay.
And I had a buddy of mine. We used to hang out. We were both single, a couple of old guys, and we'd go down and have a beer together every now and then. And he used to joke. He said I could. Everybody would say, "Do you like it here?" So I could really love this place if I could just learn to love fat, ugly women. That's a guy talk. No offense to anybody who's fat and ugly, but anyway, it was a little cow town.
Sure.
And us old guys, So I went online on this dating service and all, and never hooked up with anybody. But I had my profile on there, and in fact, it had expired. But I had on there, you put in looking to meet somebody within what distance? 50 miles of Montrose, Colorado. Mm-hmm. And so when I came down here, forgot all about that I had done that. And so I came down, and my wife, I had gone to high school. We went to high school together. She was a year behind me in school. I knew her well. So she had been divorced, and she was looking for a man. So
Sure.
she saw my picture on there, but she couldn't understand why this guy is in Atmore saying he's looking for a woman 50 miles from Montrose, Colorado. So she kind of reached out, and, you use these handles
Right,
on there.
right.
You don't use your real name. So she reached out and said, "Who are you?" And I sent her a little snippet and saying, "Well, I went to school here, and I grew up here. I went to school down here in Walnut Hill." And she recognized who I was. I don't know if she recognized who I was, but she said, "Call me at my work." So I called her at her work, and she has. We have a grandchild, her grandchild named Cameron.
Sure.
That was her handle. Was
Okay.
Cameron. So I called her, and she worked down at United Bank. And I said, "Could I speak to you? Have a Cameron who works there?" They said, "No, we don't have a Cameron, but Cameron's grandmother works here." I said,
Small
"Well,
town. You gotta love that."
Who is Cameron's grandmother? They said, "Well, it's Gwen." And I said, "Oh, I looked at the picture. Oh, I know who she is now."
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, we often joke. I said, she said, "Why didn't we get married when we were younger?" I said, "Well, you may not remember, but I did ask you for a date, and you snubbed me,
Sure.
like you just did."
Sure.
That look where you snubbed me. That's what you did back,
Yeah.
when we were 16, and we never went out. But yeah.
That's neat. That's
We met online.
That's neat. It was back in the days of AOL, and I was, after my separation, I had my children, which is unusual for a father to have custody of the kids, but we were involved in a single parents with children group,
Okay.
and
Well, they got every kind of group, don't
they did at that point. I don't even know if there's still chat rooms out there, but
they? I'm sure they do.
I'm sure there's something out there. It's many days ago, but yeah, that was sitting in the living room waiting for the the modem to gear up and go through all the sounds, and it was a different day.
All those little buzzes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, back in the good old days when you're young and you have a social life, when you're a teenager, you got ball games and school activities and all that. And then your younger life, if you have a marriage, say 10 or 15 years there, and then if you're divorced or something, what do? You go hang out at bars looking for women?
That never
How do
worked
you
for
meet
me.
somebody? You go to church, maybe you meet somebody there.
Yep.
But I think these dating services are probably all right if you view them.
I actually put ads in the newspaper.
Did you really?
They had a single section in the newspaper. So it was a different time,
Yeah.
but we got very fortunate.
Yeah.
Very, very fortunate.
Well, you guys have moved to Atmore, and you're certainly sterling citizens here in town. A lot of people know you, and you are working again. You're not just like sitting on the back porch with your fly swatter like my grandpa used to do in his retirement.
I
sit on
did
the
for
porch and
about a
swat
year
flies.
when we first got down here, and
Did you?
that just
Just couldn't handle that.
Missy
Huh?
finally looked at me and said, "Okay, that's enough. You need to go find something to do." So that was where it all started.
So you got started getting involved in Atmore stuff
Right.
before you decided to go to work.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
that was
absolutely.
your first option, is to just
Absolutely.
find something
I
to help out.
and I met the men of the round table down at Buster's.
Men of the Round Table.
It used to be at 2:00 every day. All
Yeah,
the guys.
yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah, my buddy Billy Gates used to be
sure,
part of that.
he was part of
he
that,
probably still-
and I got involved with them, and that was the start of it. And Big Dave, he wanted
Big
to
Dave.
introduce me to everybody. So, but
I see Dave. His wife passed away
Yeah,
a
that
few
was-
years ago, and he still. Well, you can look at him and tell he's not missing many meals.
no. I have lunch with them on a regular basis.
yeah, yeah. But I hear him even when I don't see him. I hear him. He'll be talking to the guy at the next table. Where
Sure.
are you from? What are you doing here?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he knows everybody.
He knows everybody, and if he doesn't know you, he's going to get to know you.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
that's
But you
where it
went down
started.
there and met with those guys, and
Yep, and between him and oh, don't let me forget the name. She worked at Audrey Moon's office. She's now since gone to Moss Point, Mississippi.
you're not talking about Jody.
No, she was there at the same time as Jody, though. Anyhow, I guess it's not that important, but
Okay.
she got me involved with the chamber, and Cheryl Vickery got me involved with the city, and one thing led to another, and it's just
Well,
the way it developed, I guess.
if you're willing to do stuff, they'll take you up on.
Oh yeah, and it amazed me that there wasn't more people willing to do. That was the biggest surprise I had.
There wasn't more people willing.
Yeah, I don't know if it would have had to been William Station Day. That she asked me if I would help, and I said, "Oh, absolutely." And there were like 3 people that were there willing to help, and it surprised me. I would figure that everybody would be there. It's just not that way. So,
Sounds like this is just something that you always wanted to do.
and it was unaware I always wanted to do.
Was unaware of it.
Yeah, it just happened, and it's been great ever since.
Any disappointments since you moved here, as far as the town or the?
I don't know that I can grab any.
Pretty happy with everything.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to tie in with some pretty great people that have directed me or helped me along the way. So I can't imagine what. I mean, there's always going to be things. I mean, little things, but not that.
Well, I can tell you this: you're a very likable person. Your name pops up everybody I talk to. Oh, do you know Tom Tschida? Do you know Tom Tschida?
I don't know if that's good or bad,
So a lot of
but
people-
we'll go with it.
You're here, there, and everywhere.
I'm doing what I enjoy, and if that means I'm here, there, and everywhere, then that's
Well,
what I
I
am.
mean, it's a good thing. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody recommends. If I don't know you, I should probably know you. So here you are,
And here I am.
just trying to get to know you. But now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Atmore has been just, they've opened their arms to me. I got the greatest neighbor in the world with Floyd Adams. Mm-hmm. Floyd and Betty have been absolutely great. Little competition with yards. He likes to keep his yard pretty sharp, and he'll send a shot over the ball periodically about my yard, but we'll get there. But
Oh, you're not keeping up his standards. Sometimes.
well, quit anybody. When you got a fence that was half put up for about 4 months, I understand, Floyd. You're probably right, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Floyd's truly retired, but you're working again.
Yes.
You're involved with the real estate. Tell us about that. How'd you get involved with the real estate?
And again, came from the round table. You got to meet this guy. You got to meet this guy. I ended up meeting Bub Gideons through Cheryl Vickery, I believe.
Okay.
And he asked me if I wanted to do a little part-time gig as an assistant, do paperwork and stuff, and yeah, that'd be fun. And I have to admit, I had probably the best real estate teachers that I could ever have with Patty and Bub. Patty Davis Helton, probably one of the finest teachers that you could ever imagine. She does it right. She knows her craft and is willing to let people know. And, without her and, of course, then Lisa Reynolds and Bub, I wouldn't be in real estate, but they took the time to show me the right way to do it, the way to do it with some integrity. And they're good people. They're great teachers. And I owe everything in this career to those folks, those 3 for sure. I did end up going with Keller Williams out of Orange Beach, a little larger corporation. It wasn't a secret. When they called to recruit me, I actually had my phone on speakerphone with Lisa listening. They offered me the world. I said, no, I'm very happy where I'm at. And then they offered me a little bit more than the world. And, Lisa was so cordial. She says, Tom, we're always going to be friends, but I'd never stop you from, bettering your career. So,
Yeah, sure.
I mean, and those are the people that you deal with. And that's a lot to be said for that.
So with the Keller Williams thing, you're sort of your own. Are you a broker?
No.
Okay, but you have your own team.
I'm
have a team
building my
concept,
own team.
Building your own
Correct.
team.
It's a form of retirement for me. Again, it'd be the third one. But here's the way I look at it. If I can, in the real estate field right now, you can work hard for 10 years and never have to work a day in your life after that. And if I can get, these kids that are in their mid-20s, train them, work with them, and give them the opportunity to be financially free in 10, 15 years, that's the legacy I want to leave behind. Honestly, if I don't sell a house ever again, I'm probably not going to miss a meal. But what an opportunity I have now to pass on something to other folks that didn't know the opportunity existed, just like Patty and Bub did for me. And I think that's important to, give back to those others. And I think we're doing a good job at that. And
well, I know there are specialties in real estate. I know some realtors get involved with the rental properties to create cash flow.
Correct.
Maybe I don't know whether they buy the properties or whatever. But when you're talking about this future revenue flow, now if you sell a piece of real estate and you make $1 million, then you got your million and you either spend it or save it, right?
Correct.
So how do you create continuing revenue? I mean, when you step out of it, you don't make another sale.
You always
how do you do that?
split part of your commission with your broker,
Okay.
or with Keller Williams, and Keller Williams has a program set up where part of that money that they get goes back into a fund for a retirement program.
Oh, does it? Okay.
And then, like with my team, those folks too would be continuing on after I've...
So like anybody else, you just put away the money in a retirement account.
Right. And it's I've not heard of any other company doing that. I'm not saying that they're not, but it was a pretty good opportunity for me to not only help people, but get a little something back. And this goes on for, I can send it to my kids. If I die, they're the heirs of that. And as long as those people keep selling, they keep getting money. So it's a pretty good program.
Yeah.
And
Well, look, you're still really a pretty young guy yourself. I mean, you're not even 60 yet.
correct.
I'm 74, and I'm still piddling around
Yep.
doing this and whatever, As long as you got some energy left, why not use it? The idea of retiring and just doing nothing,
It's not
it's
going
not
to work for
really
me.
that appealing, is it?
No, but now,
You got to be doing something.
day before yesterday, I spent the day on the bay. Took the boat, hooked it up to the truck, and was
Yeah.
gone. So I do have a sense of freedom too. That
Yeah.
I'm not doing a 9 to 5.
And you enjoy this real estate thing. It's
Oh
something
yeah,
it's not
not
like
work.
really working at all. Huh?
Not at all. I mean, there's parts.
How do
of
you
it.
get leads? What do you do every day? You just get up and roam around, or what do you do?
A lot of referrals. A lot of referrals from past customers.
And you've been at
people
this
who
for how long? The real estate.
It'd be about 3 years. I think
About 3
my
years.
wife says it was 3 years last week, but
Okay.
I don't. Okay, I'll believe her.
Well, you don't have to punch a clock anyway.
And I could never do it.
Yeah.
But I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been in my own business or had the freedom of something like that. So punching the clock would be tough for me. And at this point in my life, I don't want to.
Okay. You're involved with all these different organizations around that, more doing what you can.
Right.
What would you say is I guess your greatest passion about living in Atmore? What's your favorite thing about Atmore? I mean, as opposed to Milton or Andalusia or any other town. You think Atmore is different, or do you think it's just one of?
I think it's a small southern town. But if you're asking me what I do that gives me the most reward, I would say being an emergency chaplain. You know, you're dealing with people at their absolute lowest point, whether it be a car accident, a death, a fire. You're there to help them through that and not forget them afterwards. You know, going back and keeping. It's not a one-time shot. When you leave the scene of an accident, it's not over. Mm-hmm. You know, it's still weighing in their heart. People forget that. Or with the loss of a, I say we lost our son with the loss of a relative. It's not. Those first 30 days, everybody's there. Everybody's there to take care of them. But after that 30 days, when people stop coming around, that's when they need me to step in and say, now, how can we move forward? You know, it's a life-changing event.
Well,
and that's been the most rewarding for me, I think. I get more reward out of it than they do, I think.
Yeah. Well, chaplain sounds like a rewarding type of occupation. You mentioned you were Christian. Were you a minister? Or how do you get to be a chaplain?
I was ordained through the Assembly of God's Church as a emergency chaplain.
I see. Okay.
I went through their training program.
Is that your preferred church denomination?
Raised Catholic.
That's what I would have picked you for. What is Tschida? What is that? Or Tschida?
Tschida is an Austrian name.
Austrian. Okay.
And the story behind it that I understand is that during World War I, there was a lot of persecution with Muslims and Catholics. And a lot of the Austrian names you'll see with the TSCH combination of letters, sometimes right at the end of the name, sometimes in the middle, sometimes at the beginning. And it had to do with persecution during World War I, where people were changing their names like that. But more than that, I don't know. I don't know the total history on it, but that's where that came from. And my great-grandfather came to America, and here we are.
And you were raised Catholic in Minnesota?
Raised Catholic, altar boy, the whole bit.
When did that change? After you moved to Atmore or before?
When I met my wife.
Oh, I see.
My second wife. Missy was going to an Assembly of God church.
I see.
She was raised Lutheran. And strong pastor, very strong pastor there. And, being Catholic, I put my coat and tie on and went to church. And he looked at me the first day and says, "You need to lose the coat." And I think the second week he said, "You need to lose the tie." The third week he actually grabbed me by the tie and said, "This has got to go." And I didn't necessarily believe with their teachings, so I was going to straighten him out. And, well, that didn't go as planned. Mm-hmm. So we had a good talk, and it's been a great ride ever since. Mm-hmm. So we came down here and went to the Assembly of God Church.
So were you
here.
able to be converted based on your religious philosophy or based on the personality of the people or just enjoying the people?
I always
Where do you
had,
think your conversion was?
I always had not doubts, but problems with the Catholic religion. I thought there was a lot of religion there, and what he said made sense about having a personal relationship with Jesus, and that's where I'm at. And I was very fortunate to have that happen in my life.
Okay.
So we here we are, and now we're at Grace, which is a great community church, giving, do a lot for the community. And,
it's Grace Assembly? I didn't.
No, Grace is not denominational. Yeah,
sort of, aren't they?
You have,
but a lot of Mennonite influence.
I think it was started that way.
I believe Mennonite started it. Yeah.
But it's worship as you please.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of members out there.
Oh yeah, and they do so much for the community, and that's what got us there.
Now, tell me where your children. Do you have children from your first marriage? Where are they?
I have a boy and a girl from my first marriage. They are both up in Minnesota. Why? I don't know. But
Well, that's where they grew up, right?
well, yeah, but it's still
just
cold
stayed.
and nasty up there. So I don't care who you are. It's
My wife has a son in South Dakota. So
can't
brutal.
It is, and I just don't understand it. But anyhow, I was just up there for 2 weeks, so it's
Well, it's a funny thing. I had an opportunity to live in New York for a few years, and I always thought it was kind of humorous that people in the South, they talk about dying and going to heaven. Up New York, they talk about retiring and going to Florida.
that's right.
Everybody goes to Florida.
That's
In
right.
fact, I had a close friend, grew up in New Jersey out there, not Newark, but just across the river there from New York City. I think Patterson, little town across the river. And I called him here a couple of years ago, and he said, "Oh, still had the same New York number. Oh, we're in Florida now."
Yep. And Florida has different segments. The West Palm Beach area is from one part of the country. The West Coast is from the Midwest, and Miami's going to be more from New York. It's funny how different states migrate to different parts of Florida, and they have their own little groups.
Well, I guess they look at the magazines and stuff, and they get in their head, Florida, Florida, Florida. And they don't think about while you're driving to Florida, maybe you'll drive through Alabama and you might do what you did. Say, well, I didn't know this place existed, but on my way there. My favorite word is serendipity. You know what serendipity?
Yep.
The knight went out to find the Holy Grail, but he never found it, but he found lots of other things along the way. And that's sort of life in general. We find things that we aren't looking for.
The journey is better than the destination.
That's true.
Absolutely. That's like I say, we drove to Minnesota, and the journey was better than getting there. Open your eyes, get off the freeway, take the back roads. We live in such a beautiful country, and people have seen so little of it. My wife was in her mid-40s before she ever stepped foot out of Minnesota.
Really?
So much to see, so much to do.
Well, I have lived in different little towns throughout my working career, just trying to seize opportunity here and there.
Right.
And it's interesting. In the military, living in California, every place I've ever lived felt pretty much like home. I mean, after a period of time, after 3 or 4 months, it's begins to feel like home. If you're there a few years, it becomes home. Kind of.
It's what you make it.
It's kind of. I mean, if you have roots, some people, when my children were, I was in the military when my oldest child started the first grade.
Okay.
And I was coming up on deciding whether to re-enlist and stay in the military or not. And so the wife and I talked about it. We had grown up in this part of the country where you live across the cow pasture from Grandma's house.
Right.
And you kind of wander in and out and say, Mama needs a couple of eggs, or a bowl of sugar. Just kind of roaming in and out of your grandparents. And go to the same school. You have the same teachers all through the years.
That's right.
And we kind of looked at that picture and wondered whether we should stay in the service. I didn't mind the military. It's a good life. Mm-hmm. And drag my children around to become what they call them military brats, military kids.
Right.
Going to different schools. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. A lot of people do that, and they get diversity and really learn a lot of stuff. That wasn't what we wanted. We wanted ours to have what we called roots. Mm-hmm. That they would be able to tell, if they say, where are you from? Well, I'm from pretty much everywhere, we moved around. We wanted them to be able to say, I'm from here.
Right.
And we did that, and it wasn't a bad choice. They to this day would consider home. And that's sort of how I ended up back home. It wasn't that I really loved Atmore any better than I loved any other part of the country I ever lived in, really. It was that I had family here.
Okay.
And now, my brothers and my sister, I have 4 brothers and a sister, and they're all back here in Atmore. They're all here. And it's just really great. My wife and I talked about this all the time, how, if I need somebody to lift the other end of a table, I'll just call one of my brothers. He runs over and helps me out.
That's right.
Or if I have a computer problem, I call my computer brother. He comes over and, helps me out.
Sure.
Same way, I go help him out. It's nice to have family wherever you are. I think family is a big part of what we call home. Or family and friends.
Can be.
Family and friends. To me, that's where it was.
Family doesn't have to be blood.
That's true.
And that's what I found here is that I've lived basically 3 places: Midwest, West Palm Beach, Florida, and here. And even in West Palm Beach, when Hurricane Andrew was coming in, I was down there during that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember all the neighbors got together to help each other take all the stuff off the roof, put stuff away. And then the hurricane passed, we all put stuff back, and we still never talked to each other. And Abmore's not like that. I don't think the moving van was in my driveway for an hour before Floyd and Betty came over to introduce themselves. And I mean, that's a community spirit that I love. In St. Paul, I remember this as clear as day, and my kids were so mad at me. We made a bunch of apple pies, and we said, go take them to the neighbors, because that's what you do. And the answers were, no, we're not interested. How much are they?
Right.
And no, we're your neighbors. We live across the street. But down here, it's different. You're going to have a 15-minute conversation standing with somebody at the bank.
Yeah.
And that's...
Have you ever noticed how people wave at one another down in the
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a friend of mine one time, this was up in New York somewhere, he said, oh man, the South people are weird. Have you ever noticed everybody waves? So you meet a guy going down the road and he's driving his car, he waves at you while he meets you. Yeah, we all do that. Yeah. Or a guy's raking out in his yard and they'll stop and lean on the rake and wave at you as you drive by.
Well, they wave at you in New York also, they just don't use as many fingers.
Well, that's probably
Exactly.
true. No, that New York, that was an experience for me. I'll tell you a quick story how I ended up in New York. Never in my life would I ever thought that I was going to live in New York. At the time, I was on my second marriage, and my second wife, she was kind of a little bit of a fruitcake, I'll say that. But it turned out a funny thing happened. She had this dog. And I had got her this little dog, and I hated the little dog. It was a little Cocker Spaniel, and she loved the little dog. And I hated that dog. Couldn't get it house trained. And so she finally, one day when I was out traveling, she went and got rid of the dog. She took it to an orphanage. And that evening when I came in, she was just crying and crying.
Sure.
She said, I shouldn't have done it. The little dog's name was Bobby McGee, after that song.
Sure.
And she said, well, I went down and gave that dog away, and I didn't even get going. I was going to get him all his shots and have him adopted to a good family. But as I was going in the door, there was this Polish family, whole family of people, and they just saw that little blonde-headed, beautiful little dog, and they just went to doting on that dog, and they wanted the dog, and I just handed them the dog. I gave them the dog. And now I've changed my mind. I want the dog back. I said, geez, I don't know. She said, they don't even speak English. I said, well, neither does the dog.
That's right.
So what's the problem? I said, look, it's a family. They're going to love the dog. Maybe they're a poor family, but it doesn't matter.
Sure.
So anyway, she couldn't give up on the dog. She wanted me to find the dog. So I said, well, look, maybe we'll, I know a buddy of mine back there. He's knows some of these Polish folks work in the factory where I work back there. Maybe he can connect and get the dog. Well, that didn't help. So then she wanted me to hire a private detective.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, to find the dog. So this went on, and so finally she said, listen, I'm going to go see this psychic. It'll tell me where Bobby is. I just have this feeling that if I go to this psychic, that she'll help me find Bobby. So, all right. So she goes to the psychic one night, and she comes in, and I said, well, did the psychic tell you where to find the dog? And she said, no. She said, give it up. You're never going to find the dog. I don't know where he is. But, by the way, you're going to be moving to New York within the next 30 days. I said, right. Yeah, that ain't going to happen.
No.
I was down in Dallas, Texas at that time. And so within 30 days, the company that I worked for was based in Colorado. They sold the company to a larger company. They offered me a better deal, which wasn't a better deal. They offered me their deal. And it was a smaller company. I was making really good money, about half the pay. So I went on the market and I started shopping, and a lady called me from New York. one of my customers. I said, listen, I'm leaving the company. I'm not going to, it was a customer. And she said, well, I know this guy that we've been doing some buying from. They do the same thing you guys do. And, you might touch base with him. Touched base with the guy, drove to New York, met him, turned around, packed my stuff, and they offered me a job, and I went to New York within 30 days. I'll never forget. I mean, I'm not promoting psychic.
No.
But it was a strange thing. And how I ended up in New York. People ask me, how'd you ever end up in New York? Well, that's how.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know how I got there. But I had 7 years in New York, and I found it to be not that much different from living in Alabama or Mississippi.
Really?
I mean, the people talk funny. They talk different.
Well, they talk right, but go ahead.
But they talk right. I talk right. They used to make fun of me. They liked me because I talked different.
For sure.
I remember one time I went down to New York City on a sales call, and this guy, they had these construction projects going on all around the country. And he was talking about having this project. I was in the IT business. And he said, one of his foremen said, man, he's down there in Florida. He says, down in Florida. And he says, man, he got to get back to New York. These people down here are so dumb. He said, man, you ought to hear them talk. They talk so darn slow.
Yep.
And my sales rep that was with me, he said, well, Lloyd's from Florida. And the guy says, oh, you from Florida? I said, yeah, I'm from Florida, man. I had to get out of those. People talk too darn slow, man. I can't. But we had a good time picking at one another,
Sure.
About the accents and all. But other than that, those guys go coon hunting. I mean, this is not New York City.
Right.
I lived upstate about 60 miles.
Big difference.
A little place called, what was the name of that little place? Hopewell Junction. It was up near Poughkeepsie, New York.
Sure. Just the name of the town itself tells you what it is.
Yeah, it's a little country town, and people act the same way, just got a different accent. That's all.
Yeah, my wife would have a condo downtown New York City, and thrive wonderful. And I honestly can't think of anything worse. No. Now we had a condo, and I loved the condo life. Watch somebody else cut the grass, watch somebody else shovel the snow. I enjoyed the condo life, but to be downtown New York, and I just don't think I could do it.
No, I wouldn't want
You do whatever you have to.
You do whatever you have to do, and you enjoy it. I have always been adventuresome as far as always wanted to see different parts of the world.
Right.
And so I was never afraid, never reticent about moving and seeing these parts. And New York City truly was an experience.
Yep.
If you've never been to New York City, you ought to just go visit, because it's almost like when you watch the TV shows where people are just teaming up and down the street.
That's right.
You say, well, those are probably movie extras. I mean, there's no place really like that. It's really like that.
That's right.
I mean, people go to, go to Grand Central Station. You have all the Hasidic Jews up there. I'd never seen a Hasidic Jew.
No.
I never knew, I'd heard of it, but I didn't know what
Right.
that was. It just, and it's just it's a strange, eclectic place.
That in Washington, D.C., I think everybody
Washington, D.C.,
should
yeah.
visit both.
Yeah.
There's so much history in both of them and I'm a kind of a history buff myself. And
the people, I had always seen, in movies and all that, New York was hostile. They'll mug you or they'll tell you the wrong. I never found it that way. I could be in the middle of New York City and say, hey, man, I'm trying to find my way to say, oh, yeah, they'd stop and talk to you and tell you where to go.
like any town, there's
Like any
good
town.
parts and bad parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, New Orleans.
I never found it to be that way.
Same thing. Or New Orleans, as
New Orleans, yeah.
I've learned to say. But, I mean, you got good parts, you got bad parts. It's what you want to make it.
Yeah.
You know?
But it is a different lifestyle. Now, when the first time I ever went to New York, I went to visit some friends up there, and they lived in a little apartment in New York, and their closet was hanging clothes on a nail in the wall.
Right.
I mean, you just don't have the space to have the kind of houses we have
You
down
can't
here.
afford the space to have the
You can't
houses.
afford it. New York City, I don't know if they still have rent control up there or not. There used to be some people with reasonably priced apartments in Manhattan.
To the best of my knowledge, there is still some rent-controlled buildings left.
And that came out of World War II, where the government, in some of those houses, it's attached, it's rent control. But I think once you move out,
They
it can go back free.
Absolutely.
They can raise the rent. But as long as you're there, they can't raise the rent on you because of World War II.
So, I mean, people are living, cheap, But
Not too many. Most of those people are dead now, But
yeah, probably. But no,
I don't
there
think
are
there's
some,
a lot of rent control left.
I think there's some left, though. Yeah, I probably not as much as was, but I think there's still a few buildings left that have places in them. But they're,
But
20 years they'll be gone.
Yeah. Living in New York, people rave from New York about the diversity of food, restaurants. Of course, you have restaurants
correct.
everywhere. I didn't find it that way. It's all pasta. I mean, you have an Italian environment up there, and New York is, it's like in the South. I grew up on beans and cornbread.
Sure.
It wasn't for beans, we'd starve to death. In New York, it's pasta. Everybody eats Italian. Everybody eats pasta, and I've just never been a big pasta eater. But everything was Italian style. Whatever you have, beans Italian style.
Right.
So I didn't grow up on that kind of cuisine, so I didn't find it that enchanting or Mexican food. Hey, best Mexican food I ever ate was either in Arizona or California or Texas.
Sure.
And that's where you get your good
Because
Mexican
it's
food.
authentic Mexican.
It's authentic Mexican.
Not what Taco Bell made it
I
to
never got good Mexican food in New York.
That's right.
Yeah, but you do get good Italian food in New York. If that's what you.
You're not going to find a good crawfish in New York either.
No. In fact, when I lived up there, they opened a new restaurant. I can't think of what the little town was. They said it was authentic Cajun restaurant. So I told my wife, let's go down there and let's get us some raw oysters and some of the alligator tails.
Sure.
Let's check that out. Go down there, and I ordered as what do you call it, the beginning appetizer?
Right.
Give me some raw oysters. Okay. So they bring me the raw oysters, and I said, well, could I get some crackers? Crackers?
For what?
I don't think we have no crackers. Yeah, you got to have crackers. To eat an oyster, you put it on a cracker, right? And you got to have some sauce. The
hot sauce.
Yeah, hot sauce. So I don't believe we have no hot sauce. I said, okay, well, bring me whatever kind of crackers you got. And they brought me some Ritz crackers. I said, no, wait a minute. You can't eat an oyster on a Ritz cracker. It's got to be a saltine cracker. Mm-hmm. And then the alligator tails, they were out of them. And I'm thinking, did y'all actually go to New Orleans to visit any restaurant center to see what authentic Cajun really is? Or did you just think it up that we'll have what you thought it was? Because this is nothing like New Orleans.
I remember my introduction to crawfish. I thought, wow, I'm never going to do this, and try to keep me away from a good crawfish boil now.
No, I can't eat crawfish.
Oh.
That's much like eating a roach is anything I've ever seen.
You're right. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, these guys. I used to work on oil rigs for a few years ago, and these guys that order crawfish out there, and they'd be sitting there sucking those heads.
Oh yeah,
it was turn your stomach. I couldn't stand it.
Well, it's perceptional. Are you eating a roach or are you eating a baby lobster?
Well, there you go.
It's all perception.
Yeah, I just couldn't deal with it.
No, I am.
Well, Tom,
I'm liking it.
We're having a wonderful time talking. I appreciate you coming by and just having a little conversation with me. And we're coming within a minute or so of our allotted time for the radio broadcast.
Appreciate you inviting me.
Well, good luck with your real estate career and all the stuff you're involved in. You got a great personality. You're well liked, and I read a book one time about the 15 laws of success. All great successful people, there are 15 laws, and I'll never forget that one of those laws was you got to be likable. People won't do business with you unless they like you.
Well, I hope I have that factor for them.
Tom Tschida, thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Lloyd and Friends Show with Lloyd Overton.